Who is the Beast? According to the woodsman, he is the one who haunts the woods of the unknown, singing his mournful melody as he searches for those lost within his domain. The tavern keeper a few episodes later will give the boys a slightly different description, telling them that he who carries the lantern in search of its fuel must be the Beast. Later in the series, Adelaide will deem him, quote, the Beast of Eternal Darkness, a couple of episodes before Wirt coins him as, finally, the obsidian cricket of their inevitable twilight. None of these, however, really fully capture the element of the character I'm most fascinated by. See, while you can spend however long your heart desires on what the Beast physically is, whether he's a tree that's been corrupted or even the woodsman's daughter herself, that's not super appealing to me. As while I absolutely adore the world of Over the Garden Wall, as well as the stunning animation and continuously unimaginably good soundtrack that brings that world to life, none of those are the element of the show that stuck with me most over the past soon-to-be 11 years, as that honor belongs to the meaning behind the show's 2 hours of wacky hijinks. This show's ability to tell a story about two brothers in their Halloween costumes as they travel around with an occasionally talking frog and always talking bird, and still make that story hit as hard as it does thematically, is just something that's never quite left my mind. And I think the role the Beast plays in all of that is just so interesting. Perhaps the easiest conclusion to come to is that the Beast must be analogous to the show's version of Satan, or whatever stand-in for the evil leader of the evil dimension you'd like to pick. I mean, the show is clearly at least somewhat based on the idea of the unknown being a stand-in for the afterlife, and the most wicked being in the afterlife just has to be the devil. Depending on which version of the leader you choose to compare to the show's antagonist, this resemblance can become even stronger, with several Screwtape-esque interpretations evoking the idea of gradual loss of hope-based damnation. However, I don't really like this interpretation of the character. Partially because it doesn't really mean much unless you believe the show is about one specific religion's view of the figure, partially because it is kind of a little bit too simple, and partially because the Beast doesn't ever do the most iconic of Satan-esque things and actually convince a single person to do an actual evil deed. In fact, the only thing he ever successfully convinces anybody to do is to give their life to trying to save somebody else. Not exactly full-on biblical demon territory. So while the silhouette, the pretty much horns, and the general demeanor of the character make this an interpretation that feels silly to entirely declare as untrue, it's just not something I believe covers the character's role in this story, at least in its entirety. While interpreting the Beast's role in Over the Garden Wall as Satan is the easiest conclusion to come to, I would say classifying him as some sort of personification of surrender or general hopelessness is actually the most common. This, of course, makes sense, as the show is more than willing to explicitly spell out that, indeed, these are the attributes associated with the victims of the character. When Wirt and Greg begin to become the Edelwood trees that the Beast is so desperate to create more of, it's because they have given up. They have surrendered to his efforts. As we see through the woodsman's ability to pretty effectively limit him, the Beast is much weaker in the face of any type of resistance. It's only a complete and utter lack of desire to put up any type of fight that leads to the Beast conquering absolutely anybody. But that's not exactly what happens, right? Sure, Wirt does initially fall victim after giving up, but Greg very notably doesn't give up. The woodsman too, pretty and arguably the greatest victim of the Beast, his entire story is about not giving up, working every single day to try to keep his daughter's flame alive when every possible thing is screaming for him to call it quits. And on top of all of that, a pretty universal thing that main antagonists tend to share is that they are thematically tied to their series in some way. And I really don't think Over the Garden Wall is about not giving up. Instead, the show has always been, honestly somewhat plainly, about conquering the unknown. Wirt and Greg go into this world they don't understand, where everything seems horrible and terrifying all the time, and quickly learn that almost nothing is as bad as it seems. The first false beast they encounter turns out to be a sick dog, evil pumpkin cult turn into peaceful post-life gatherings, crazed gorillas into men in gorilla suits, ghosts into lovers, evil ants into loving caretakers. Almost everything in the unknown that isn't immediately understood can eventually be. From this interpretation then, it makes the most sense that the beast wouldn't simply be hopelessness or surrender, but that he must be the antithesis to this idea, this feeling behind every end of episode twist. As while the beast does offer respite from the continuous fight, he also offers something else, something more visceral and ultimately impactful within the show's story. The idea that if you take charge, if you sacrifice everything, you can control what happens to the world around you. An inherently false idea that nearly destroys everybody he encounters. He offers Greg the opportunity to save Wirt from a fate of surrender, offers his brother something very similar, and most critically has been trapping the woodsman throughout the entire show with the premise that, as long as he keeps doing this known task that he hates, he can avoid the potential of going home to a world he can't understand, a world in which he believes he will be without his daughter. This, of course, mirrors what's happening with Wirt back outside of the unknown, where he's continuously choosing to stay predictably miserable on the outskirts of interacting with Sarah, rather than actually facing the unknowns of just talking to her. Perhaps my favorite element of this interpretation comes in how it recontextualizes the demise of this video's title character. Unlike almost every other villain described or portrayed as some personification of darkness, the Beast isn't defeated by turning on the light. Instead, the way he is ultimately taken out is by eliminating the tiny amount of light that is present, fully accepting the unknown for the collection of shadows that it is, rather than clinging to the false lantern in front of them. This is why the Beast seems so powerless in the face of any type of resistance. Anybody willing to even just see what the future holds is able to see him for what he is, a maker of deals meant to destroy your life under the guise of preventing that same destruction. For a show as ethereal as Over the Garden Wall is, the Beast is a perfect villain in more ways than one. His ability to both literally hide in the shadows and entirely take over scenes, the general ambiguity over his physical form, but more so than anything else, it's just the fact that he fits so neatly as a juxtaposition to the rest of this world that works so damn well. Who else could be the antagonist of a place so often surprisingly kind and pleasant than one who forces you to imagine a reality where that's never the case, and then offers you a terrible choice to avoid that possibility at all costs? Of course then, this makes the true moment that the Beast has been defeated not when Wirt doesn't give up, or when he declines the offer of permanently stalking the woods, or even when the woodsman literally extinguishes the Beast's life, but instead when Wirt finally stops trying to avoid it and fully embraces the unknown.
So, maybe we can listen to this.
You can listen to it at my house. Yes.
This has been AmpleSamuel, happy Halloween, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks for watching.